Hello, it's Michael E. Gerber speaking to you from Carlsbad, California. I got a little hitch in my voice today, but don't let it bother you because we're going to be speaking about and speaking to an extraordinary reality. And I'm going to speak about it as the hero in America. And now, obviously, that's not something that everybody really talks about a lot. And that's the reason I'm so excited about awakening the entrepreneur in America, awakening the entrepreneur worldwide. But today, most specifically, because I'm going to be speaking to a true, hear me, every one of you, a true American hero. His name is Larry Yatch. And Larry, I welcome you to join me here as I asked you to do me a favor I've not done before with any of my guests. I simply want you to share with the folks we're talking to who you are, what you've done, and please don't be humble about it, because there should be nothing humble about a US Navy SEAL, especially not about a US Navy SEAL leader, which of course is who you are, who you've been, and what you're very, very proud to be. So Larry, welcome the folks we're speaking to, and please tell them about you and what you've been doing all this time.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really amazing to be able to be here anytime we get to spend together. It's always not only a lot of fun, but very enlightening. So I'm looking forward to this time together for sure.
Thank you, Larry.
So I'll just give some highlights, and then from there you can ask some questions. We can go into the different pieces. Big highlights in my life were I went to the Naval Academy. So I saw Top Gun when I was in third grade. And before I left the movie theater, was 100% convinced that I needed to be a fighter pilot. Soon found out the best fighter pilots came from the Naval Academy. So before, imagine a little skinny, nerdy third grader, 100% convinced he was going to be a fighter pilot and go to the Naval Academy. And I started working towards that goal in that time, right? That time of my life, and never wavered. I found out about the Navy SEALs in seventh grade. And I was a little skinny kid that grew up in Pittsburgh. And I was a nerd. I mean, because how many kids want to go to the Naval Academy from third grade and start working on that? And so I would have definitely been voted least likely to be a Navy SEAL. But that concept of being not only a strong warrior, and a big driver for me was being bullied very badly through middle school and high school. And so one, I got to be the tough hero that all those bullies said I could never be. But more importantly, my job as a SEAL is to hunt bullies, some of the worst in the world. And so I got to do that and not only prove that I was a warrior, but take out some of the worst bullies that existed. And from there, I went to the Naval Academy. I did get in, so spent my time, got an engineering degree from that, then competed with some of the country's best students to get an opportunity to join the SEALs. And got a chance to go to SEAL training and graduated. My training class started with 135 guys. And 6 months later, we graduated 11. So over 90% attrition in my.
Wait a second, how many graduated?
11. So 135 to 11. And on top of that, coming from the Naval Academy, I got to go to training as an officer. So one of the hard parts about that is all SEAL instructors are enlisted SEALs. And so when you go to training, you actually outrank your instructors. And more importantly, they know that when you graduate, there's a chance that they're going to work for you. And so imagine if you got a chance to put all the bosses that you've ever had through some of the worst military training in the world. Imagine the attention you would put to them, including knowing the fact that if they graduate and make it through training and you work for them, if they make a bad choice, your life is at risk, or the life of one of your best friends. And so that level of responsibility and focus, right? Their focus and responsibility to make sure that I was a leader that they would follow was part of training. And on top of that, I wasn't only responsible for getting through the world's most difficult military training myself, I was responsible for leading my boat crew through it. So I was never right? No matter what I did, someone in the class did it wrong. And as an officer, I was responsible for it. So being able to learn that level of responsibility early on was really important. And I graduated in the spring of 1999 and chose to go to SEAL Team 3 because SEAL Team 3 is responsible for the Middle East. And back in 99, there's nothing going on. And I figured if there's going to be any conflict, it would be in the Middle East. And as we know from history, I was right. So I spent would have been 10 years, 1999 to 2008, working with SEAL Team 3 for a number of years, and then Group 1 doing combat deployments to the Middle East until I was injured and eventually had a career-ending injury.
What year were you injured?
I was injured in 2001. Would have been 2001, 2004, and 2006. And ultimately had a back surgery that went really badly. And the surgeon nicked a nerve root trying to repair my back, and my whole right leg went numb. So that was my career-ending injury. And so a surgeon came in and told me that my SEAL career was over in 2007. And so I spent a year getting patched up, and then I got medically retired in 2008. And interestingly enough, my whole purpose was taken away at that point. All I'd ever wanted to do was serve, was to be a SEAL. I'd reached my goal. Like my whole goal in life was to go be a combat leader in the SEAL teams, and I got to do that. And then that got taken away. And it was actually my fiance at the time, now my wife and business partner, that really, I would say, saved my life. She is a badass in her own right. She has a master's degree in anti-terrorism and counterintelligence from Georgetown. And so she was working in the intelligence fields while I was out in the front lines. And she was the one that came up with the concept that really allowed me to have purpose again. And she saw that what really drove me was keeping this country safe, obviously, and doing that through leading. And my method of leading that she saw was really heavily based in teaching, right? Being able to enable those that I led to make the right choices themselves, not be directed in action. And so she said that we could continue to defend the country through education. So since 2008, we've run a series of 3 different companies, all training companies of one form or another, where we specialize in behavior change. We've trained close to 200,000 people over the last 11 years in everything from technical things like counterintelligence to personal safety. And then for the last 8 years, we've spent all our time in human performance and, most importantly, teams and leadership for corporations.
Wow. And teams of what sort? Leadership of what sort? Who's the demographic that you focused your attention on in these past, I think you said 8 years?
Yep. So generally in the corporate space, so businesses, we had a company that we did leadership development programs for mid-market companies. So companies somewhere between 10 million and 2 to 300 million a year. And we generally worked with the senior leadership teams. So that's talking the executive teams at the top through the first 1 or 2 layers of management. And then for the last 2 years, actually, we're getting up onto 3 years now, we've switched to, we continue to service those companies, but we've also started training individuals. So we run a lot of virtual classes, so live classes, but it enables us to bring individuals. So we have the honor of being able to teach anyone that wants to better coordinate action with those around them. And ultimately, that's what a team is two or more individuals that need to coordinate action to create a different future. And so generally, I'd say the big thing that we do is we generally only work with high performing people. If you're not a high performing individual, you're not going to make it through our programs. Just like if you're not a high performing individual, you're not going to make it through SEAL training either.
I got it. So effectively, how many would you say high performing people live within that sector that you're focusing your attention on?
So, I mean, the beauty of technology is that we have people that we train from overseas, right? We have people in other countries. So when you get to high performers, even if you just look at the top 10% of individuals in any one domain, the cool part about coming to the business world from the SEAL community is I don't have domain expertise. So it's not like I'm an expert in pharmaceuticals or production. I'm an expert in being able to coordinate action in extremely high risk dynamic environments where if you don't make the right choices, something really bad happens, right? And ultimately the business world is a battlefield as much as I was in. It's just not as deadly.
Well, I would suggest it may not be as immediately.
I'm with you on that. I completely agree. Like I've started to flavor that because I look at the heart. I mean, BUDS, which is basic SEAL training, that 135 to 11, that really, really hard training, that is a piece of cake compared to being an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm telling you, the hardest thing I've done in my life is start and run a successful company. That makes SEAL training, combat look easy. I'm telling you. That's why I love servicing entrepreneurs, because I know how hard it is. I mean, it's really hard to be in that environment, especially in the earlier stages of it, to be able to create the support you need to be successful. And that's what we do really well, is be able to teach either the entrepreneur or, more importantly, their senior leaders how to be the support structure they need. Because I truly believe that everyone should feel the same sense of security, of brotherhood, of safety that I felt, not based on my environment, but based on the group of guys I had around me, my team. I mean, that's why the only reason I'm in front of you today, I'm alive, is based on my team, not my individual performance. And being able to have that and have, I believe everyone should feel that, right? Be able to have that level of support.
So I absolutely get that. I truly do. I'm going to question it.
Yep.
I'm going to question it because it's being truly conscious and aware of the danger that you're speaking about, that every Navy SEAL is aware of every single day around every single corner when they're in the field, that heightens their need to relate to what you're teaching them. It's that unawareness, that lack, I'll say, of consciousness of the severity of the outcome that triggers the extreme rate of failure of what we'll call entrepreneurs, because so many of them aren't. Now, understand what I mean by that is that in my world, where I've been working with not the mid-market companies, the 5 million and above companies, like a company that focuses solely on those companies. I work in those companies before they become those companies.
Right, right.
And the massive failure rate of all those small businesses speaks to what you confront when you're coming face to face with people who come to you, who effectively, if you truly were to put them through a grueling test in order to qualify for what they're about to do with you, you would have to get rid of 90% of them.
And then the rest wouldn't fail. And that's very similar to the way that the SEAL program works, right?
That's my point.
90% of the people that start don't make it. And another thing to just kind of get clear on the numbers. So of the 135 guys that started, those were culled but from another, let's say 2000. So, I mean, you're already getting like 1 to 5% just to get there. And then of the 1 to 5% that get there, only 10% of those are going to make it. So, I mean, you're talking a fraction of a percent that actually make it to the point of, and that's just the first block, right? So that's fun. And then it goes on. Yeah, it goes on for more. And so this I think is an interesting point that I'd be interested to hear your perspective on this relative to what you're talking about. SEAL training doesn't make a SEAL. SEAL training just gets rid of all of those that aren't already SEALs. And that's a really
SEAL training point. Finds a SEAL.
Yeah. All I was doing was proving the fact that I already was. Right? I wasn't made a SEAL in training. And so it's kind of an interesting concept relative to what you're talking about of even if you were able to produce that sort of crucible, right, to get the people to get through it into them, all you're doing is revealing the true entrepreneurs, right? Everyone else just wasn't. And in order to become an entrepreneur, in order to become a SEAL, you have to have, I started, and I still remember the day I became a SEAL. I was in 7th grade. Like, I remember the day, like that was the day that I became a SEAL. It was the first time that I ever told anyone that that's what I wanted to do. And I told one of my best friends, a guy that I had known since 2nd grade. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and we grew up by the river.
Wait a second, Larry. I want to make everybody get this point.
Yeah, please. It's an important point.
That we're speaking about Larry when he was 3 years old making a choice. Now we're speaking about Larry when he was how old?
So I was in 7th grade. What would that be like?
7th grade, but
12? Yeah, 12, probably 13.
Yeah. In the 7th grade, folks, when this happened, the 7th grade, get me. Go on, Larry.
Yeah, thank you for bringing attention to that, because this really is a critical point, and I think more than anything else enabled me to have the success that I did as a SEAL and ultimately in the other aspects of my life. So 7th grade, I tell my friend, Marty McCabe, a guy that I'd known, one of my best friends growing up. And I said, I think I want to be a Navy SEAL. And he looks at me and as most people did at that point, really all the way through high school, laughed like, okay, funny joke. No, seriously, I do. And I remember him looking like then confused, like, okay. And his next thing, we were down by the Allegheny River. It was in the fall, so it was cold out. And he's like, well, if you're going to be a Navy SEAL would be able to swim across the river and come back. And I was at the time an okay swimmer. Like, I wasn't on the swim team, but I was an okay swimmer. And I remember thinking, well, but it's freezing cold. I've never swam across the river before. I'm like, well, okay. So I strip down into my underwear and I jump in the cold Allegheny water and I start swimming across the river, and I get about halfway across. And at that point, I'm freezing, I'm shaking, I'm starting to cramp a little bit. And I remember looking and thinking, I'm only halfway across. I might be able to get to the other side, but I'm not going to be able to make it all the way back. And I remember turning back and looking at him and thinking, well, I know I can get back to the dock. And my initial thought was to start swimming back. Well, like, okay, you know, maybe he's right. And then I had this thought, a Navy SEAL wouldn't turn around. And like, well, if I want to be a Navy SEAL, I need to start making choices and acting like one. And so I'm like, well, I guess I have to keep going. And so I swam across. I remember crawling out on the other side, exhausted, freezing, shaking. And at this point, it was interesting. At this point, I didn't question it again. I waited a little bit and I got in and I swam back to the other side. And so that moment of a Navy SEAL what would a Navy SEAL do? Navy SEAL would keep swimming. When I started to think like a Navy SEAL and make choices like a Navy SEAL and take actions that a Navy SEAL would action, I became a Navy SEAL. And then from that point on, all I was doing was proving it to the world.
I got it, Larry. That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. Now, you understand, I don't know what your religious affiliation is. I don't know whether you have one or not. But one who does would say that isn't a moment that you spoke to Larry. That's a moment that God spoke to Larry.
It was outside of me, that is for sure.
Yes. That is a moment that you came into touch with your true self in God. If a Christian, in Christ.
Yep.
If a Muslim, you understand. In that moment, something occurred within you that completely transformed you. And you took it up. You took it up. You took that path up. Understand, you might have said in one respect that when you were 3 years old, you were touched within.
Right.
But what was true about you is however you were raised by your parents, there was an openness to that vision, to that inspiration at 3. So suddenly, and I might be in the Welterrhein saying any of this, but understand, suddenly it opens up a possibility for all of our children. In other words, whether they opt to become a Navy SEAL or opt to become a pastor or opt to become a home builder or opt to become whatever it is they're inspired to become, to be, not to do, to be. You opted to be a Navy SEAL, not to do a Navy SEAL. You follow me?
Completely.
Yeah, this is my perception of how Larry was made to be Larry, who Larry was born to be.
And the important point, I believe, for the audience is the understanding that if you want to be something, if you want to achieve something, you have to make it true, your truth, right? It became true that I was a Navy SEAL. And then I needed to start thinking like a Navy SEAL. I needed to start making choices that a Navy SEAL would make, which would lead to actions a Navy SEAL would take, which then makes me a Navy SEAL. And so the same thing works for anyone in anything. If you want to achieve something, you have to see it as your truth. You have to start thinking like someone or someone that has already done that. You have to start making the choices that that person would make, which leads to the action that that person would take, which means you're now that person. I mean, and it sounds really simple, but it works. The one key to this, like absolute key to this, is self-regulation, right? It's not easy. Like that's like, yeah. So that's a very simple thing, like really easy to make those choices. yeah, it's easy to make the choice, but the actions that then came from the choices I made were really freaking hard. And that takes self-regulation, and that takes practice, right? You have to practice self-regulating.
You have to practice being what you're setting out to be.
And the ability to hold the truth.
Oh,
right. So it's even more than that. Like the world is going to try and take it away from you. Like my instructors weren't trying to make it easy for me to be a SEAL. They were making it really damn hard, right? They every which way they could. The world was, my parents, my girlfriends, my instructors at school that didn't give me a good enough grade. I mean, all those things were barriers to the actions I needed to take. And I had to have the self-regulation and the perseverance to continue to do that. And that takes practice. That's why if you don't show up with a big old heap of self-regulation ability, you're going to get out. You're not going to make it. And that's I love this question. Well, what's the common thing about someone that makes it through training? And the one, there's only one. You can't be quite right in the head.
You can't be what?
Quite right in the head. You got to be crazy. Because, and it's funny and it's true, right? What they ask you to do in training, normal people say no, right? What they ask you to do to sacrifice with your family, normal people say no. What they ask you to do on the battlefield, normal people say no. You got to be not normal. The one thing that I found was common, right? You couldn't see like height, shape, background, social, economic, intelligence, none of that stuff they can find any commonalities to when they look at the guys that make it through. The one thing I found true between every SEAL is something was messed up in their childhood. Something that they had to persevere through. Like for me, it was bullying. For my buddy Isaiah, he grew up on a dairy farm. Like, so it was chores in the morning and school in the afternoon and chores at night. For my buddy Glenn, it was an abusive dad that drank, beat him up. For my friend Eric, it was a dad that literally lost his mind when he was 7. Like, so every one of these things is an environment in your life that required you to persevere, to start building the ability to self-regulate so that you could when it came up.
But what you're saying is so absolutely clear. And so absolutely clear, which is different than what most of us relate to.
Yeah.
Most of us relate to being different.
Yeah.
Or being the same.
Yeah. That really being the same, like being normal. Like the worst insult you can say to me is, Larry, you're normal. Because that means then you think, if you call me normal, I'm not going to do anything exceptional, because normal and exceptional don't overlap. So
they don't live in the same. They don't live in the same space.
No, I cherish being weird and abnormal, because only then can I do something exceptional.
Yeah.
And so I love that message. Like, I love that message for my boys. Like, no, we are weird. The weirder, the better. And weird people unite. Like, I'm not that I'm calling you weird, Michael, but like I get you too much for you to be normal. Like we wouldn't be able to relate that well if you were, because I don't. Normal people don't want to be around me because I make them uncomfortable. Like, good. Like, see ya. Weird people all day long. We can do amazing things.
Okay, so this is really, 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 really important. And important, so important, I'm not going to address it here. But then what you're called to do, Larry, and you may have done this, is to give a definition to weird. Weird isn't just being obstinate. Weird isn't just doing stupid things. Weird isn't whatever stupid means. Weird isn't being just odd because you want to be odd. Weird in every single one of the cases you've spoken about. A father who, a mother who, the work who, the dairy witch, etc., and so forth. Normal people don't do that. don't live there, or just hide from it. So the weird you're speaking about really deserves an in-depth conversation.
I've got a distinction for it.
Okay.
So this is my distinction for it. And for me, a distinction is different than a definition. A definition describes stuff. A distinction makes it separate from everything else. It pulls it out. It's functional.
Perfect.
And so for me, a distinction of abnormal is, for a human being, is knowing your truth and having the courage to act in alignment with it. Now, again, simple words, but I'll say it again. Knowing your truth and having the courage to act in alignment with it. Why this is not normal is that to be normal, I have to take someone else's truth and act in accordance with that to fit in. Right? Abnormal, I know my truth. I know my line, and I have the courage to act in alignment with it. And that means I'm not going to act the same way as you, and you. That makes me weird. That makes me abnormal. That makes me strange. So that to me is the key.
In relationship to the river, that was abnormal behavior.
Exactly.
There you go.
I knew my truth.
Abnormal behavior in concert with the truth of you.
Right. In alignment. And that's where this is. So I think is such a, I mean, it's a very, I used to say simple. I call it elegant now, like super elegant, right? To be abnormal means that I make the choices in alignment with me and my truth, regardless of what's around me. Now, what's cool about that is you can, if you know your truth strong enough, you can find others that have similar truths. And that was one of the most amazing gifts I've ever been given in my life. Was the first day I walked into the platoon space, my first team, my first platoon. I walked in, and within a minute, I was like, holy crap, I'm not strange. Like, I can say what's on my head and they're not going to laugh or make fun of me. They're probably stranger than me. And I remember walking, when I left that day, my first day, I called my mom and I said, Mom, for the first time in my life, I fit in. And it was amazing. And so what's neat about that is I could live my truth and they could live theirs, and we got to work together. So I was normal in this abnormal little group, but we were all very clear on our truths, and we were all had the courage to act in alignment with that. So just because you're abnormal doesn't mean you're bound to be alone. You just get to attract and find and build the group of abnormal people that know their truth, and it's in alignment with yours.
But now I'm going to say but, and here are the but.
Yep.
The but. Then that requires, you say it's not a definition, but a
distinction.
When you use the word your truth. What you're essentially saying is that no matter what each individual's truth may be in a team, they can equally behave consistently and congruently with the purpose of the mission. So,
which is, you can look at it as an extension of an individual's truth, right? So, and another word for truth is purpose, right? My purpose is another word of that which drives a specific end, right? And the end is to achieve and live my truth, right? My truth, the truth of our organization, our 16-man team, our truth of our 200-person SEAL team, are the truth of the Navy SEALs in general, right? Those are just bigger purposes that have to nest, right? So my truth nested in with my platoons, nested in with my teams, nested in with my country.
I got it. And so to be a Navy SEAL, um, which was what you decided you're going to be at one point in your career to become a fighter pilot,
Yep.
to join the Naval Academy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Each of which moved you for whatever reason you don't know. But when you are in the Naval Academy has one big, absolutely mind-blowing truth.
Yes.
You don't get to be a whatever in the Naval Academy. You get to be what the Naval Academy has determined you're going to be.
Within certain flavors, right? So it all depends on how close you look at it. In one aspect of it, that there's certain, if you don't live within the truth of the naval. So for example, honor, we have an honor code.
Yes.
Midshipmen will not lie, cheat, or steal. So if you're going to be at the Naval Academy, you're going to be a midshipman at the Naval Academy, you make an oath to that code of behavior, that honor code.
Yep.
And the sacrifice, if you break it, is that they can kick you out.
Yeah.
Completely. And it's that quick, right? It's like a court process. So there's a court of your peers that determine if you lie, cheated, or stolen, you're gone. And something as simple as a fake ID, right? If you have a fake ID, that's lying, you're gone. If I'm drinking a beer in a bar, even if I didn't have a fake ID, I had to mislead someone that I was 21 when I wasn't. You're gone, right? And so that small of a piece is part of the truth of being at the Naval Academy. Now, the midshipmen that wanted to be on a submarine versus on a ship versus on a plane versus a Marine versus a SEAL, all different truths, right? And all different choices and actions, but all under that umbrella. And that's why I like that I like to think of it as Russian dolls. You know, all those Russian dolls are painted differently. They all look differently, but they're the same shape. They nest well together.
Yes, but on the other hand, I'm going to do but again. And you understand it's a picture of within the picture that you're describing about my truth, that effectively my truth, if I chose the Naval Academy, has to live within the Naval Academy's truth.
Yes, it has to nest.
Yeah,
your little doll has to fit. Now it could be painted like mine was painted with guns and tridents and all that stuff. And then you had another guys painted with submarines, and other guys that was painted with the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor of the Marine Corps, and others that was painted
but
they all fit.
Yeah, they all fit. But the Naval Academy had the final choice.
Yeah.
You didn't do submarine just because you said, I'm going to do submarine.
No, yeah, and you had to earn it, right? And it was up to you. Now, that's where if that is your truth and you acted in alignment with that and made the choices and took the actions that were in alignment with that truth, then you got there. And if you didn't get there. And so the system got to tell you got feedback. You know what? You didn't act in that truth of being a SEAL enough, so you didn't get a chance.
Yeah.
And the competition at school to get, like, that's another one thing that blows you away when you look at numbers. 12,000 applicants for my class at the Naval Academy. 1,200 got in.
Wow.
It's harder to get into an appointment to the Naval Academy than it was that year than it was to get into Harvard. Now, of course, it's different competition scales. Like the kids that got into Harvard might have been smarter than me, but at least just pure competition was harder to get into the Naval Academy. So 12,000 to 1,200. Of the 1,200, let's say there was 150 to 200 of the 1,200 that said freshman year, I want to be a Navy SEAL. By the time we got to our senior year, only 54 qualified to compete to get a spot. So 12,000, 1,200, 200, 54. Of those 54, only 15 got a chance to go to SEAL training. Wow. So the weed down process from 12,000 was down to 15. Like just to get, and I remember sitting at dinner with the rest of the 15 guys, and we were all smiling and drinking and happy. And then I'm like, oh crap, we didn't win anything. We just got to the starting line. Like, this was all just to get to the starting line of the race to go to the hardest military training in the world.
I love it. So now here, think about this, Larry. Think about the 12,000
Yep.
who were moved to wish to be accepted in the Naval Academy.
Yes.
Who's thinking about the ones who didn't get in?
Not me.
No, but hear me, nobody is.
Yeah. It's like the quitters. People ask what happened if someone quit. Like, I don't know. They're dead to me. Because this is why they're dead.
But hear me. And
go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear me about this. And then I think we've accomplished what we want to accomplish here. I'm going to ask you right here, right now, without anybody else's permission, I want to have you visit me once a month.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love it. As I knew, right? Because of being abnormal, it's going to be fun for sure.
I want you to visit me once a month because I want to take on the 12,000.
Yeah. Maybe shift them.
Yeah. I want to take on the ones who were moved to and have no idea why they didn't get in.
Yeah. It's hard. And the other thing is there are skills, processes, mindsets. I mean, there's things to do to make it easier along the way. I mean, that's where I've spent my last 10 years is identifying how can we take someone that might not be able to do it on their own? Because my path to do this wasn't easy. Like, it was hard. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there. It could be a lot easier. It doesn't have to be that hard. And just because I applied it to the hardest military training in the world in combat doesn't mean that everyone has to perform at that level. Like, one of the challenges, well, whatever you teach, like, I'm not a Navy SEAL, I can't learn. Yeah, that's why you need to learn it, right? You need to learn it because you aren't. If you were a Navy SEAL, I wouldn't have to teach you, right? Of course, right. So yeah, that's the world telling you got something to learn.
So just know that we just spoke about the Naval Academy. We could be speaking about Harvard. We could be speaking about Georgetown. We could be speaking about any of the elite among the elite. And we could then be reaching out to every human being on the planet and truly reshaping how their mind is organized, how their heart is organized, how their imagination and their wish to be is organized in a way to go far, far, far beyond anything they will ever do. Indeed, our schools, and we spoke about this off camera before we got on, the report that I just read and our producer, Rob Hicks, is speaking about as well, that the average high school graduate has only an average 22 or 23% comprehension of all of the things they were taught, presumably taught from grammar school through high school, which means our education system has failed immensely. And nobody is doing anything about it, because all they're really doing is attempting to make them normal. In short, to be a normal human being with a normal, stupid job, doing normal things, even if you do them abnormally, with a normal perspective, which is not to succeed, not to have a profound impact upon your children, upon your spouse, upon your friends, upon your family, not to work hard toward discovering what a human being is and how a human being is shaped. Think about that. Now, I know there are special little schools attempting to do that. I'm talking about the big hummer. I'm talking about the big outcome. I'm not talking politically. I'm not talking socially. I'm talking internally, existentially. What is a human being for? And so if it's said we're born in the image of God, we're born to create, we're born to create a world fit for God, then something unimaginably profound occurs within everyone. But nobody's teaching that.
Yeah, you wouldn't have our school system's based on producing factory workers. It's been for years. So you wouldn't want a factory worker to be able to create, or you would have no factory workers.
Of course.
You don't need them anymore. That's
but we would have entrepreneurs.
Yeah, one of our second businesses was creating curriculum for leadership for middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And within that, we got to look behind the curtains of the school systems. And that's when I decided, yeah, my kids aren't in that system. No way. Not for me.
Okay, Larry, you and I have to have this conversation. I'm committed to having this conversation, but not just that, I'm committed to do something about it. And I'm enlisting your center, your wife's center, to truly take it on. And when I say that, I don't mean and then. I mean to take it on where we are by simply opening the conversation to truly getting to the heart of our failure. The 12,000 who,
yep.
The whatever who, and now are out there. These are people who wanted to become students in the Naval Academy. They were inspired to become students of the Naval Academy. That's now lost in the majority of them. Or the reality is, I don't know. We don't know where they went. We don't know what they did.
Yeah, I'm sure there's that percentage that use that loss to build the great thing, just like I used bullying to create the opposite of that with a SEAL. So, there's going to be a variation. And the one thing I know for sure is we're exactly where we want to be every moment of our life, or we would have made a different choice and been a different place. And so, for me, even the things that I consciously say I don't like about my life, I know I'm subconsciously choosing to have it, or else we would make a different choice. And just that power to understand that we are exactly where we want to be every moment of our life. And if we want to change it, all we have to do is make a choice.
Got it. So let's talk more about that when we come back. Larry, thank you for joining us here at
My pleasure.
Awakening the Entrepreneur Within.
Yeah, well, hopefully we awoke some people. That's my hope.
And every single one of you out there, hear me. If we were born in the image of God, and I believe we are, then we're born to create. And if we're born to create, we're born to create a world fit for God. Whatever God is in your mind, the creator of the universe and universes beyond, I'm essentially saying we have such an extraordinary responsibility to become real, to become true, to truly do what this extraordinary hero with us here, Larry, has done and continues to do. But understand there's even more left for him to do that he isn't doing. I swear to God, that's true. And what an absolute stunning reality that he's going to be joining us once a month, and we'll pick, however it works out, to come speak to you and me to investigate this possibility that something is waiting for the 12,000, for the 12 million, for the 1 billion people on this planet that looks nothing like anything they even come close to understanding or relating to. Larry, thank you very much. Been a delight. And thank you all. I'll see you the next time to awaken the true entrepreneur within. I'm Michael E. Gerber speaking to you from Carlsbad, California, the land that God created just for you and just for me. Bye-bye.